and welcome to our City Council regular meeting for Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. If the clerk would please call us to order. Excuse me, do the roll call, sorry.
Mayor Karen Howe.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Amy Lamb. Here. Councilmember Kaylee Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Sid Gupta.
Here.
Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if Councilmember O'Farrell will please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Councilmember Gupta, could we please have the land acknowledgement statement?
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. First and seconded, then let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? So 7-0, we've approved the agenda, and we will now move to public comment. So I see that there are folks in the room. I'm going to ask right now, there's 3 people signed up. Is that accurate? If it is, that's great. I just want to make double sure. So the first public commenter will be Paul Victor.
Okay, thank you for your time. My name is Paul Victor. I've lived on the plateau for 48 straight years. And when I moved here, there was one stoplight in Redmond, Sammamish, and Issaquah, and there was a gravel road to the main entrance of Sahali. I have a couple concerns. First one is water. I live off of Ebrights Creek, and since the development up here, the water quality, the water's gone up, and it's also been polluted. We had a maple tree that was like this big, huge branch. It eventually, over the years, died off and then fell over. It's not there anymore. I've talked to city planners. They say, well, we put the porous concrete there, but moss gets in there, and it's not porous anymore. Second one is traffic. If you've been off of 228th when the schools come out, it's very challenging trying to get to Trader Joe's. If you look at the geography here, we have a north-south choke points, and that's the only way to get out of here unless you build a bridge over Lake Sammamish, and I don't think anyone's proposing any of that. I do like some of the progress that's gone here. Don't have to go to Redmond to go to Blockbuster Video. So there are some good things that have happened, but you also have to realize that there's a fault that most people don't want to talk about, the Seattle fault that probably goes through Snake Hill, that starts west of here, and if there's an emergency, how do people get off of here, as they had a problem in LA. Cost, I worked 39 years at Boeing as a chief engineer and retired happily, but I had to go back to work because the property taxes have gone up, cost of living. All of you experienced some of that. But if the developers don't pay their way for sidewalks, as well as new schools that have to go in, the levies are going to force us out, even though I've lived here 48 years, and I really don't want to do that. So the question is, who decides on what we're going to do? In the early 80s, King County, because it was before the city, had a thing over at Pine Lake Middle School in their gym, and basically was going to try to move from one house per 5 acres to one house per 1 acre. And all the developers invited all their friends. And whenever anyone wanted to say anything about keeping this rural, they got shouted down. I'm glad we're in a situation here where it's a little bit more convenient to be able to talk our what we really feel. So basically went from the county control to the city so we could keep it the way it was. Not necessarily when I moved here 48 years ago, but some of you moved here 2 or 3 years ago. And then basically you have to decide whether it's us or the developer.
Thank you for your comments.
You decide, we'll observe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Aaron Longtari.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and city staff. My name is Erin Longchari, and I'm the Development Director at the Garage Teen Cafe in Issaquah. We're a drop-in center that's an inclusive, safe space for teens. Before this, I led programs and case management services at the Issaquah Food Bank for many years. I saw firsthand how many Sammamish residents must leave town to access basic services. I lived in Sammamish for a number of years, but moved in 2020 to afford our first home, as prices were out of reach for me here. I'm here tonight to express my support for the Town Center project and urge the city to prioritize intentional growth that fosters a more connected and inclusive city. I work closely with teens and local service partners. I routinely see how much our community is in need of spaces that foster human connection. Some of you may know that the Garage is looking to expand into Sammamish to provide services for even more teens. Sammamish is beautiful, it's lovely, and for many, it is still isolating. We lack an anchor for a walkable, intergenerational community. The Town Center, in my perspective, is more than just about development. It's a chance to reshape the heart of Sammamish around connection and care. This project reflects what residents have been asking for a long time: walkable public spaces, access to more services, diverse housing options, and places to gather, learn, and engage. And these are the foundations of a thriving city, welcoming all backgrounds, fostering belonging, and engaging everyone from kids to seniors. A place where nonprofit staff, like me, can afford to live in the community we serve. This is the future Sammamish deserves. We cannot delay thoughtful growth needed to build a more accessible, vibrant, and connected city. At the Garage, we know that when teens have a place where they feel safe, seen, and supported, mental health improves and a sense of belonging grows. The Town Center would expand that vision beyond the Garage into a thriving hub for everyone. And I urge you to consider supporting the thoughtful design of the Town Center as a bold investment in the future of Sammamish and its residents. Let's build the kind of community where everyone feels like they belong. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Boggs, please.
Hi, my name is Aaron Boggs. You can't hold back the tide with a broom, but you can plan and manage growth in a balanced way. I grew up in the Northwest and I've lived in other states and abroad. I've lived in a rural farm, suburb, and dense high-rises in Asia. I returned to the Pacific Northwest and Sammamish for the Schools in Balance in 2020. I've had 2 of my 3 children graduate from high school here in Sammamish, and 1 still in high school. I hope that someday even my grandchildren will be able to attend schools here today. The schools are currently oversubscribed at this time and crowded to the point to where it's a challenge not to be late for class just moving through the halls with the congestion. The main reason people move here is for the schools. The property values of which we have is due to the school rankings and access to high-income tech jobs. If the school's rankings are devalued due to oversubscription, then expect the property values to cease to sustain or increase and workers to look elsewhere to reside. If the property values don't grow with the inflation, then a curve of deficit will continue to drive the amount of property tax revenues needed to sustain all services and infrastructures needed. All the infrastructure, schools, roads, utilities, need to be scaled in balance with the growth of the sum of all the residents need. The burden of this should not fall onto only the existing parcel owners. Developers of this scale should be required to provide the needed for the schools, infrastructure, and the likes of a taller fire truck. Is the additional property tax from additional parcels created to scale relatively to all the funds, schools, and infra? You're elected officials, but are you in tune with the property tax-paying residents? Have you solicited non-biased surveys to stay in tune with these residents? Townhome and condo owners are parcel property tax payers. Apartment renters are not. In an apartment building model, is the owner of the building paying property tax each year at an equivalent ratio of home to family that will be residents consuming school and infra utilities? It should be clear who will pay continual parcel property taxes at the ratio of residents for any new dense living spaces. I'm 100% in support of a percentage of low-income units for those that work and support in this community. I would hope that there is an absolute assurance that those that really need it have access and that those units are not exploited by loopholes. Something like they need to show employment and proof that they are relative to the area and that they do contribute and live here. And frequent audits to ensure compliance. Until growth can be balanced and maintain what makes Sammamish special, please refrain from painting us into an inescapable corner. Let's keep Sammamish qualitative and not quantitative. Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's no one else in the room for this period, then we will go to online. Okay. I need your name.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Well, hang on.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Hi, my name's Vinod. Sorry, I don't have a...
1 minute. We're not quite ready for you, almost. I'm sorry, first up will be Vinod. Is that you?
Yes, that's me.
Thank you.
I'm surprised I'm first. I don't have a prepared speech. I've lived here since 2015. First time I came up the Sahali Way, I knew that this is the place I wanted to stay. And the beauty, the surroundings are all the things that make me want to live here. When I hear these proposals, and I see every day I'm stuck on 228th, I fail to see the common sense in adding more and by thousands. I'm sure there are very smart people making these decisions, but I wonder if common sense is being applied to these decisions as well. It seems like every old lot is replaced by at least 5 houses. And when you take a lot the size of maybe 10 houses and you're going to add 2,000 more, seems like a bit much. As a Sammamish resident, which by the way, you can buy a t-shirt, they sell them in Rite Aid, it feels like we're not going to have the Sammamish that we had with this change. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to mispronounce your name, but Sue Grinnis-Hill?
That was close. That was great. Thank you. Hi, I also live here in Sammamish. I've been here since 1999. I think I know a few of you. I am in a property, 19706 Southeast 17th Street, very close to a 5-acre parcel that is being requested for rezone. We do understand that that is no longer part of, the purview of this body, but a hearing examiner is going to review that. So we've made our submission of request why we believe it's not a good idea. What I wanted to do is just maybe reiterate a few of those points to you and ask if you'd like to come see the property, just come by my house, I'll walk you through, and you can take a look at it. It's a 5-acre parcel and it's completely enclosed by R1 housing and R1 housing. Even though the downhill side of this property has some zoning that says R4 and R6, it's all R1 or even larger plots of homes. And the request is to rezone this little 5-acre parcel that's completely surrounded and make it an R4. It's also on a pretty steep grade, both from south to north and from east to west. And there's some nearby erosion zones, and you can see evidence of erosion on my property, and you can see on the downhill property right next to this parcel. So our request, and we just would like to make you aware, is that we would like to see an environmental study done before any rezoning decisions are made. And I, again, recognize that that's not the responsibility of this body at the time, but it is good to make you all aware of that. And I do welcome you to come by, and you can reach me. I can put my email in here, and anyone can reach me and come over. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Bradley Harridges.
Okay, let's see. Since I went to a meeting and have looked at your budgets and the money that you have spent, well, that mismanagement of money that you have spent, also that I've been in construction for 40 plus years and just retired, I've never ever seen a city buy back property from a developer and pay them millions of dollars more than what they paid for it. So on that, I'm a little bit disappointed, thinking that you guys had better fiscal responsibility. I'm not seeing it from anybody here. I don't have that luxury. I've lived here since '93. My wife grew up in Issaquah, in Overdale Park, so she knows the area very extensively. My neighbors have been here since the early '60s. I hear stories about everything that's going on up here. It would be nice, yes, to have some density, and I understand from some of the people, but I grew up in West Seattle, and we had the fun little place of affordable housing that was basically a den for drugs and everything else. I'm not saying it's great. I hate to label it that way, but I'm not a big fan of it. And then also, what is affordable housing? Nobody can explain to me what affordable housing is that you guys say that we need. Because the way you guys are raising taxes, it's not going to be affordable, even if you do have apartments or anything like that, because somebody's going to have to pay the taxes. And being that I just retired, thought I was going to be able to live here and retire and not get kicked out of my house, like I see a lot of people in Seattle who had the same issues where you guys just spend and then like, hey, then we'll figure out how to freaking do it. Like, oh, we'll just add a tax here, add a tax there. I'm just kind of curious if that's how you do that at home. Do you just spend money willy-nilly and then go to your boss and go, hey, dang it, I just overspent by a couple $1 million. I need a raise. You all know it doesn't work that way. My feeling is you guys are responsible for our money. Everyone here, the kids that are going to grow up, everybody else is going to grow up here and want to live here. And what I've seen in just the short time that I've looked at it, it ain't going to be that way. I'm going to be lucky if I can even retire here and live here for the next 10 years. If you guys keep on mismanaging money and spending and doing stuff that you're doing, it's disgusting to me. It's actually pretty pathetic. And I'm not happy with you guys. I even voted for some of you, but the management that you guys have done with this money and tried to jam another 2,000 condos or apartments or whatever it is, you guys aren't even explaining how or what you're going to do, is unrealistic and downright criminal. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other comment in the room, we'll go to online.
Those who had pre-registered by 5 o'clock today, if you'd wish to provide comment, please raise your hand online. I see no commenters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are finished with this side of public comment, we are now moving into executive session to discuss with legal counsel potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren I. Approximate duration will be 30 minutes. We will come back at 7:20. What? Oh, and council will likely not take action. We are extending to 7:35.
So moved?
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to presentations and proclamations. For the first proclamation, we have Deputy Mayor Lamb with Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
This is for May 2025, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas May is recognized nationally as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander AANHPI Heritage Month, with May being selected as the month to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese, May 7th, 1843, and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad by Chinese laborers, May 10th, 1869. And whereas the 2025 theme, A Legacy of Leadership and Resilience, honors the trailblazers and visionaries of the AANHPI community whose leadership has shaped history, inspired progress, and created a foundation for future generations to thrive. And whereas this commemorative poster featuring the bamboo plant symbolizes the strength, endurance, and resilience of the AANHPI community, able to withstand harsh conditions, bend but not break, and rise strong after adversity. And whereas AANHPI individuals have demonstrated resilience in the face of discrimination and adversity, turning challenges into opportunities and continuing to shape our communities through innovation, cultural richness, and public service. And whereas today more than 700,000 Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders live in Washington state, representing 48 Asian and Pacific Island nations, and through their actions make our state a more vibrant, prosperous, and secure community. And whereas the city of Sammamish proudly joins in celebrating the legacy of leadership and resilience within the AANHPI community, recognizing the profound impact and ongoing contributions that enrich our city and nation. Now, therefore, Karen Howe, Mayor of City of Sammamish, do hereby proclaim May 2025 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and encourage all residents to learn more about the vibrant histories and achievements of AANHPI individuals and communities.
Thank you. And if Councilmember Clark could please do the proclamation for safe boating and paddling week. Not padding, it's actually paddling. That's
Great,
because you
thank you.
successfully captained an 8-person electric boat.
Yes.
No one died.
Yes, that is true. Okay, May 17th through the 23rd, 2025, whereas for over 100 million Americans, boating continues to be a beloved recreational activity, bringing families, friends, and communities together on coastal, inland, and offshore waters. And on average, 650 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the United States, and 75% of these are fatalities caused by drowning. And the vast majority of boating accidents are caused by human error or poor judgment, not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today if they had worn a life jacket. And safe boating begins with proper preparation and education, including carrying life-saving emergency distress and communications equipment, wearing life jackets, completing safe boating courses, participating in safety checks, and remaining sober while navigating. And the U.S. Coast Guard and the National Safe Boating Council, along with federal, state, and local partners, encourage all boaters and paddlers to be responsible and to be practice safe boating habits every time they are on the water. Now therefore, Karen Howe, Mayor of Sammamish, does hereby proclaim May 17th to 23rd, 2025 to be Sammamish Safe Boating and Paddling Week, and encourages all residents to support and practice safe boating habits, ensuring that everyone can enjoy our nation's waters responsibly and safely throughout the year.
Thank you. We will now be moving into public hearings, and David Bile will be walking us through a presentation.
Great. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, David Pyle, Department of Community Development. Let me go ahead and join as a panelist and share my screen. Thank you for your patience during the transition. Great. So this evening I have a short presentation for you, which then leads to opportunity for any questions you might have, and then ideally opening up a public hearing and adopting an ordinance integrating the city's recently adopted critical areas ordinance into our shoreline master program. I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over the project background and what the changes are, and provide a little bit of context about the difference between the critical areas rules and the shoreline master program. This process began in January following adoption of our, or I guess effective date of our recently amended and updated critical areas rules, where we brought a workshop to the City Council to provide an overview on the changes that we need to make. They're fairly simple and straightforward. Since that time, we have worked through Department of Commerce noticing and performed SEPA noticing. And we have also been working pretty closely with the State Department of Ecology, who is a key player in this, as they are ultimately the one who decides if the changes made to our shoreline master program are acceptable. A little bit of background, our critical areas updates, if you recall, our critical areas ordinance, our critical areas rules were updated in the fall of 2024 and became effective on January 1 of 2025. I think the takeaway point is that our critical areas rules are required to meet the standard of best available science. And through that process, we outlined for you all how we were proposing to amend and update our rules in order to respond to the State Department of Ecology's published best available science, in addition to other documents that were prepared by other state agencies and by our consultant who did a bunch of research to ultimately support that effort. The Shoreline Master Program is slightly different, and it has a no net loss standard. Just I think by way of reference, the Shoreline Master Program applies to all of the city's shorelines of the state, which include Lake Sammamish, Pine Lake, and Beaver Lake. And it extends 200 feet landward of the ordinary high water mark of those bodies. So the city's Shoreline Master Program provides unique requirements for any development activity in those areas. Lake Sammamish, 200 feet landward, Pine Lake, Beaver Lake, 200 feet landward. The base zoning applies, however, the Shoreline Master Program is considered to be an enhancement or refinement on top of that. One thing that's important to remember is that under the Shoreline Management Act, a city is responsible to develop and implement a shoreline master program for its jurisdiction that responds to the unique characteristics of that jurisdiction. However, the city doesn't actually own the Shoreline Master Program. That is something that is put in place by the city and transmitted to the State Department of Ecology, who then ultimately holds the master copy, if you will, in a vault. And anytime the city wants to update its Shoreline Master Program, we have to go through a process of sending those proposed revisions off to the state, and the state then determines if they are acceptable, appropriate, et cetera. It's a bit challenging because we have to go through the local process under the knowledge that the state hasn't yet performed a formal review. So we work really closely with them to perform their informal review and do our best to make sure they've got eyes on it and that we're getting, the feedback that we need from them in order to successfully navigate that final phase, which is after you pass an ordinance adopting it, it has to go and get approved by the state. So we've been doing that. That's what we've been doing over the past few months. The good news is that they recognize that we did a good job with our critical areas update, and they also provided comment on that, so they're aware of all the work that we did. And I also want to highlight that engrossed House Bill 1653 from 2010 tried to address this gap between critical areas rules and shoreline rules. And it basically requires that if we've done our work in adopting an updated critical areas rules set, that should be something that the state automatically accepts. So we have EHB 1653 on our side, but nonetheless, we still have a few more steps in the process. So getting into the actual amendments, really, this is the section we're talking about. It's this paragraph that directly integrates our critical areas ordinance into our shoreline master program. So this comes from Title 25, which is the master program implementing development regulations. And these are the changes that we're looking at making. The State Department of Ecology does not recognize reasonable use exceptions in shorelines. Instead, those types of projects are to be pursued through a shoreline variance, which ultimately the State Department of Ecology is the decision maker on. So we're excluding things like exemptions and exceptions that the state does not feel are appropriate in the shoreline jurisdiction, because ultimately those are things that they want to have say over in the end. And they have a permit process that is set up to accommodate that. Further, the state does not recognize the concept of isolated wetlands in shorelines because of proximity to water bodies and the likelihood of hydrologic connections between those water bodies, and therefore it is not probable that you could have an isolated wetland in the shoreline. So they don't recognize isolated wetlands, therefore we are accepting that from the incorporation by reference. Finally, the pilot program was one that they had previously not recognized. They did not believe that we should be allowing fill of wetlands in the shoreline. And we had previously had that in our code. However, with our critical areas update this last cycle, we have repealed that. So it is moot. This is the new paragraph that would be incorporated into our Title 25 Shoreline Master Program implementing development regulations. It includes new references to those numbered sections in our critical areas rules that we are not incorporating by reference. It's really pretty straightforward. I want to give you opportunity to ask any questions, and then we have some motions set up here. There is an ordinance in your packet and a public hearing that would be required prior to taking action. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Council, do you have questions, clarifying questions before I open the hearing? If there are not any questions, then I will open the public hearing. Are there any comments? There are not. Okay, as long as this pertains.
It's a stretch, but it pertains.
Okay, Mr. Eastman, thank you.
James Eastman, East Lake Sammamish Parkway. I had the choice whether to get up earlier or get up now, and I didn't want to ruin the theme of the night, so I saved my comments for the public hearing. But this is a change coming out of the critical areas update, and I support the ability to make changes to our code after the critical areas update. I gave public comment at the Planning Commission meeting. I was looking at why developers are putting in less density than they're allocated, but I was looking at this Bright O'Neill short plat just on Southeast 4th there, and I went and I saw wetland, and I saw that it had a habitat score of a 6 with a category 3. And I saw that it had a 50-foot buffer in 2024, and I looked at the new code, and we went to a 150-foot buffer. So I originally thought that was 3 times the buffer, which it is, but buffers are kind of like pizzas. Like a 16-inch pizza doesn't equal 2 8-inch pizzas. It's pi r squared. So if you have a small dot and you go out 50 feet around it, that's like a 7,853 square foot wetland buffer. But if you go to 150 feet, that 7,853 becomes 70,685 square feet of buffer. So it's 10 times the amount. You can reduce it, though, by providing a wildlife corridor, and it goes to 38,000 square feet, which is a little over 5 times the amount. So I thought, man, that's a lot for a wetland that borders town center. Like, how's that going to play out? The buffer's going into town center. The city just spent all this money on Southeast 4th. There's a development right behind that wetland. You can go actually drive it, like go to the 3rd roundabout on Southeast 4th, go right on 222nd. There's a house, and then there's a wetland, and then there's a dense development 50 feet away. So then I got to thinking, like, what if someone wants to build an ADU at that house? Or what are those people that back up in the dense development in their backyards? Like, because the buffer per our code went from 50 to 150, like, are we facing the same issue that we talked about with the stream buffers, where people are already non-conforming? If people want to build ADUs in their backyard now, and it was mapped at a 50-foot buffer and recorded at a 50-foot buffer, but because it was scored at a habitat score of a 6 and a category 3 wetland, per the new code, it's 150 feet. So could they put an ADU in their backyard? Could they do anything in their backyard? Because the buffer should down for the new code be 150 feet. So there's a lot that went on that we didn't talk about. But really what I'd like to see the council reconsider is should we have category or habitat scores of a 6 on our wetlands that are where we want to put our people in our centers? Maybe for our centers, we should pass a code that says the max habitat score in our center is a 5, no more than a 5, because that's where we want our people.
Thank you, James. If there are no more commenters in the room, then we can go to online.
Those who had pre-registered today by 5 o'clock, if you would like to provide testimony, please raise your hand. We have 2 commenters currently. Mary Wichter.
Good evening, City Council. This is Mary Wichter. I've been in Sammamish 24 years. I wanted to say just a little bit about critical areas and shoreline. I think at the last public hearing or opportunity to speak, I'd said the shoreline code, I believe, precedes the critical areas code from the Clean Water Act by 1 year. So that's one of the reasons that the shoreline kind of has its own thing and the critical areas aren't in them, because it's in the shoreline master plan or shoreline code. Also because Sammamish is on the lake, so is Bellevue, so is Issaquah, so is Redmond. So you do need to have a governing body that's wider than just the city, because a shoreline isn't just a thing, it's part of something else. So what I noticed from the critical area maps, you've heard me talk about geologically hazardous areas quite a bit. Geologic hazard areas are landslide hazard areas, which incorporate steep slope hazards, erosion hazard areas, and also seismic hazards. And if you look on the city's map on Sammamish property tool with the layers, and you turn on seismic, you'll see that seismic really, it's in brown, and it really only appears along the lake shore line of Lake Sammamish. And then the liquefaction zone for that is all the way through Issaquah, and the first gentleman who spoke for public comment tonight talked about the fault that goes kind of through the middle of Sammamish, but kind of lower than halfway on the map in general. So my question was always, hey, if we're doing critical areas and we're doing landslides, steep slope, erosion hazards, and seismic hazards, and we only have the seismic hazards mapped on the shoreline, how do we handle that? Like, there really isn't any code that deals specifically with seismic. And if you did have a big earthquake, you'd at least probably have sloshing from the lake, and maybe that brown mapping along the shoreline is for a liquefaction zone right at those houses. But I'm not aware of anything in the code or the shoreline code that kind of deals with that. I think the only place seismic rules are covered is potentially through the building code, which I do not know very well because I haven't been building houses. But I think we need to think about that because your people along the lake, they get that, the area that Director Pyle had talked about up to 200 feet above the high water mark. And you have the potential to have seismic there. And I don't know how that gets covered. I know there aren't any changes in the code for it, but it's just a thing I wanted to bring up again because I have spoken on critical areas in the past. They're getting integrated into the shoreline master plan, but they're done under shoreline code. So instead of a reasonable use exception, they have variances for those things. And I know it took us a long time in the city of Sammamish, but through Director Pyle's efforts and team leadership and staff, we did actually get reasonable use exceptions limited. So if you're in an area where you really shouldn't be building at all and you're going to build a house, it can't be bigger than like 2,250 square feet or 2,500, depending on whether you're talking about square footage or footprint. So I don't know if there's a limit for the shoreline people on how big those houses can be. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I will now promote the second commenter. Paul Stickney.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. I support incorporating critical areas into shorelines and would just like to have the council consider a placeholder to potentially come up with, I don't know the exact words, so I'm going to talk about a what in my own words, come up with a few specialty changes for about 3 or 4% of our city in centers that would not affect any of the resources we're trying to, protect. So, for example, I'm not aware of town center or in the other centers in the city that there's any fish habitat in our centers. They are upland and have stream flows that are important to feed fish-bearing streams downstream, but there's not actually fish. So I'm all for water quality, water quantity, flow, keeping the shape and size of the wetlands, protecting erosion, maintaining temperature, all the sort of critical resources that we're trying to protect. But I question some very wide buffer lengths or widths in our urban centers when large mammals are not a priority to mix in urban centers. Some examples I've heard about that I don't have too much specificity on. I've heard of some sort of unique circumstances that are a fit for a community in Kent, in Woodinville, in Bothell, and Bellevue, considering Snohomish County has IDD, into innovative development design, so they blend resources they're trying to achieve in both the environmental and housing and complement each other and protect both. I believe Mill Creek has something like that they're starting. But in sort of a closing statement, I'd like to say that resources need to be protected for the environment, for the character of the community, and for housing supplies for life to alleviate housing imbalance in Sammamish. And can we find a way in our centers to do all three? And that was an interesting idea Eastman had about not having a habitat score over a 5. It's basically associating buffers to achieve all goals without quantitatively harming the resources that we're trying to protect. Appreciate the option to speak tonight.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
That's all for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. If that's all for public comment, I'm closing the public hearing. And now is your time, council, to get on the board. No one has lit up my board yet with questions, proposals. What are your thoughts? And if you don't have thoughts, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the ordinance amending the Shoreline Master Program SMC 25.01.070 as drafted in Exhibit 1.
Second.
It's been first and seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion?
No.
Very good. Let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. And thank you, David.
Thank you, council. I'll see you in a little bit.
It's like a bag penny. You just show up, don't you? So let's go on to unfinished business. Presentation review of the draft of the Arts Strategic Plan. We have Anjali, Janie, Emily, Leslie, and Sarah, it sounds like. Do we have all those folks? That's awesome. See, it's a very old phrase. It's a very old phrase. Yeah, it'd be better. More politically correct.
I feel like we're the bad penny in this. He has to keep dealing with us.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks and Recreation. And with me this evening is Leslie Bain and Sarah Lukens from Framework, the city's consultant. On the staff side, I have Emily Scott, our Recreation and Cultural Services Manager and Staff Liaison to the Arts Commission, and Janie Walzer, our Management Analyst. I'll give Sarah a minute to share her presentation. Is she gonna go to the, yeah. Okay. Try that. There we go. Okay. So we have for council tonight a full draft of the Arts Strategic Plan, and this plan has been presented to the Arts Commission, and they are pleased with how it's come together and excited to start using it. As you know, this has been a year-long effort and has included public outreach, collaboration with the Arts Commission, and council guidance. And when adopted, it will be the city's first Arts Strategic Plan. And we did bring this plan to you. We brought the goals a couple months ago and got your feedback. All of that has been incorporated into the plan. And we've also included detailed responses in a matrix format in your agenda packet. With that, I will turn it over to Leslie to make a presentation.
All right. Okay. So thank you. We're really happy to be here. It's been just wonderful working with the city and people of Sammamish, thinking about arts and culture and what that can bring to your city and how we can set you up for success. So while while the presentation is behaving, I'm just going to start in. What we'd like to do with you tonight is just walk you through the executive summary. We invite you to look at the entire report, but don't want to take the time to walk through the entire report tonight. But the executive summary covers most of it. Just to make sure that you understand the formatting, it's in two pieces. There is a strategic plan itself, and then there is a toolkit. And we put it in those two pieces because we wanted you to be approving the strategic plan, and we wanted to have the toolkit live with the Arts Commission and have the ability to massage that as they use it and make it work for them over the few years, and not to have to come back to you with those tweaks. So, yeah, we listened to your comments when we were here in March, and that was really great. We have made changes according to that. The beginning is the introduction and executive summary, which we'll just walk through tonight. The plan itself goes into more detail about what you are doing already, understanding not only what you're doing, but how you're doing it, understanding the community priorities. I would say that a lot of times when you do community priorities, you get people want everything. I think one of the beauties of this is that people were very clear about they love nature. They love the diversity of their community. And those are the kinds of things that they would like to see the art that represents that, that strengthens their identity and offers them opportunities to come together as a community. We want to set the stage right now for future success. We're not suggesting that you rethink how you're doing this for right now, but to organize yourselves better, take advantage of the way that you're working currently, and set the stage for future ambitions should you want to head that direction. And then there's a bunch of appendices which lay out all the stuff that you've got out there and the background for it, that look at the ecosystem of the east side that you're within, because it's important to look at what Sammamish is doing vis-a-vis heading to Redmond or Issaquah or Bellevue for your cultural needs. What is it that Sammamish should be for your own community? Okay. All right, so the toolkit, even though we're not going to walk through it, we just want to help you understand what's in there. It's a work plan. We want to work with your biennial way that you work so that the Arts Commission is looking ahead on an annual, biannual basis so they can look at near-term projects and some longer-term projects, set themselves up for bigger projects. There's project selection criteria. We found that those are really missing in a lot of the things that you've been doing. And the clearer that we can be about how art projects and art itself can meet the city goals through those criteria, that's really important both for grants and for the selection of art projects, what they are, where they go, who they serve. There's a bunch of best practices in there. How do you commission art? How do you decommission art? How do you select an artist? What is the life cycle of the art that you have? And then a priority matrix, which looks at where the art goes, what kind of art goes, where it goes, and who it serves, so that you have a balance of things that really serve across the community. And my friend artist Perry Howard says, public art should be like a library, should be something for everybody. So that's the toolkit. Feel free to read it at your leisure. We want to just ask you a couple of questions tonight and just make sure that we are in sync with what we've got in here with the city vision. You know, we're relying on the things that you have said in your comprehensive plan, in your the parks goals, through your PROS plan, and through the mission statement of the Arts Commission. So we think we're in alignment, but we'd love your thoughts on making sure that's true. And certainly any questions that you might have. You do have some time to do that. We're looking at being back in June for a recommendation meeting, but we wanted to make sure that you had another chance for review and input. That's what we're doing here tonight. Here's the timetable. We're just about down to the you skipped ahead. Never mind. Okay, next slide.
We're actually, I think, going to switch to the
Okay. Okay.
and I'm going to try and share screen again.
All right.
If it doesn't work, I'll do it again. You know, that's what I do.
Okay, so I'm hoping you guys all had a chance to read it. I know we did get some comments, so thank you for that. And again, you'll have opportunity to give us more comments, but we'll just walk through it together quickly and take your questions and comments. Okay. So the introduction really sets the stage, but I think some of the things that we really want to point out is that it is your first plan, you can go to the next page, that you are a contracting city. And I think the nice thing about that is it allows you some flexibility. Other cities have more staff, but I think you still have flexibility to bring in the expertise that you need to partner with the organizations that you want to help provide cultural activities, classes, et cetera. And partnering is a really important thing for what you're doing. We want to talk about that as we go along and what that means for staffing. And so the two things we're really trying to do here are organizing things and aligning with city goals. Okay. You are doing quite a few things, and I hope that that's visible. I think one of the things we aim for is that the arts should be more visible. You have 27 pieces of art. Those are enumerated in the appendices. They're mostly around here, but there's some out in the neighborhoods. I think that's always one question when you're trying to balance public art efforts is what do you do that is a magnet, that is a density of things that are artistic and cultural, and you've got your space here, which is fantastic. And then there's some things out, mostly roundabouts. So thinking about getting art out in the neighborhood and certainly in the parks is great. The ferry houses are a big success. There's also things like the Artist Spotlight, which I don't know if you know about that, but that's something that the Arts Commission does to try and give your artists visibility, and some grants that are awarded annually to artists and organizations. Okay. City roles, cities act as partners, as owners, funders, and hosts. So I think it's helpful to just think about those roles as what you do. You are a partner with many organizations in the city, the Y, the library, et cetera. And partners take a staff person to be that partner, make sure that they have the capacity to be a good partner. You're an owner of those 27 pieces we were talking about. You're a funder with the grants, and you're a host. So the farmer's market is out here in your space. Okay. So with public outreach, you can see from the lovely graphic there, nature, diversity, culture, history. Like I was saying before, there is a real alignment about what people love about living in the city. So how can art be part of those things? How can it magnify those things? How can it bring people together? That lower image was really fun at the 25th anniversary. People were making haikus. We weren't sure whether people were going to go for that or not, but they took it very seriously. They were in a bunch of different languages. That was a family that all worked together for about a half an hour on a haiku. So people seem really hungry for creative efforts, and there are a lot of creative people in the city, and I think there's a lot of horsepower that you have to tap into. Learning from peer cities, there's a lot to learn from what other people are doing. We looked particularly at Bothell, Shoreline, Issaquah, and Maple Valley. I think Shoreline's a really interesting example of a newer city. They don't have a town center yet either, but they're working on it. But they have put a lot of effort into arts and culture and done some things that, are worth taking a look at. They've got a very strong partner in a nonprofit. They've brought in a lot of money from outside of the city. You guys have left a lot of money on the table from some grants that are out there just because there's nobody to be doing that. So, one of the things some cities have been doing is having grant writing workshops for people in their city to help them get that funding. So anyway, those are all written up in the appendices and in the report. But I think there are some really interesting things about having a cultural partner in a nonprofit. That is a missing piece right now for you, and the city could serve as a convener to bring some city leadership together, citizen leadership, and see if there's some people that really want to do something like that could be a partner, a new partner with you. So we talked a lot last time about the vision statements and aligning the arts activities with those. So I don't want to beat that up too much again, but I think, when you look at the Arts Commission mission as a sense of place, civic identity, and unique character, what kinds of projects would do that? I think one of the ones that has floated to the top that would be a lot of fun is to have some really wonderful markers for when you're coming into the city so that you know that you're here. A lot of those don't have a lot of space, but there's great examples of thin and artistic pieces that can not only just be a set of things that say Sammamish, but also might be different from one place to the next. So you can take a look at some of those examples and see, hopefully, if there's some inspiration there. The Parks Department, sustainability and connecting, and the recreational activities, there's a lot of things that could be done there. So again, I don't want to overdo this too much because I think we talked about it quite a bit last time, but happy to take questions. So the goals come down into public art, events, and capacity building. What kind of goals we have for public art. People really wanted, both high quality and high visibility. They really liked the idea of interactive pieces, of functional pieces. So they'd rather see benches than just a piece of sculpture necessarily. But events, cultural diversity, and connecting residents, that's really important. How can we bring people together and celebrate and share? Where do you do that? When we looked at the events that are happening, and we're getting after the season now, but there's a whole bunch of things that happen when the weather's good. There's not so much that's happening when the weather's not so good. So, maybe thinking about how to even out the calendar a little bit would be good. The strategies are to increase your efficiency so we can use the resources you have better. Aligning the goals, and then growing capacity. So those are really things that are themes that really show up throughout. And then implementing the plan, that's really about the toolkit, about the priority setting, about a work plan, about naming some names when we've got projects, who on the Arts Commission is going to be the lead, and how do we make sure that the project is on track over the life of the project, whether it's a quick win or whether it's a longer project that requires actually building something. So, all right, and that's the all-in-one graphic. Funding opportunities, again, looking at the peer cities, there are quite a few different opportunities. And again, these are choices you can make. You can take them or not. Some cities have percent for art programs. Others have like hotel motel tax, which isn't going to help you much. But there's funding that has really helped a lot of cultural organizations in this past year and for the next upcoming years through King County. I really encourage you to try and apply to get some of that money in the upcoming years. It's for cultural organizations to support their work and also for facility building. So I think we want you and the Arts Commission to keep their eye on what's out there. We've put a number of potential projects out there. We think there's some really exciting opportunities. Please take a look in the plan. We'd love to have the commons be more visible. I know where the schools are and the churches and everything, but I don't know where the commons is. So I think you've got some light poles up there that you could put some fun things out there that could really shine a light on this wonderful space that you have. There are wonderful things that you can do on trails. Artist residencies are a great way to build capacity, to bring people in that you're really excited about, that can share their knowledge with your local creative community. So you've got a lot of potential. We want to get you organized. We want to get you inspired. And we take your questions.
Thank you for the presentation. First question will be coming from Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you so much for your presentation. This is very exciting to get to this point and to have our first art strategic plan. So thank you for all your work. I really just had a lot of observations. I really love the idea of the toolkit for the Arts Commission to help with decision making and direction going forward. I think that's something that we've been missing. And I think the Commission themselves will be really pleased to have such a toolkit to help direct them. So I thought that was really wonderful. I liked how in the plan everything was kind of tied back to our guiding documents, the comp plan and the pros plan, because obviously arts and the parks coalesce really well, and so I liked how that was called out. I really liked the inventory of our current public art and to kind of exactly see where everything is and who the artist is and kind of the name of that piece of public art and all that kind of. I enjoyed that too. In Chapter 2, it was mentioned about getting back to pre-pandemic levels and gaining that momentum to rebuild that, and I think that's very true. And I think we're, 5 years from the pandemic, and I think everybody is really anxious not to go back to where we were, but to move forward, to move on. And I think this plan itself is exactly that. I liked that in Chapter 3, you pulled the current visions of the city, that the city's working on, what our community have told us, and then the mission of the Arts Commission kind of comes together from that. And that really felt like you were looking at what the city's currently working on, what we've worked on in the past, and what our residents have had to say about all of that and what we've been missing. So that was really great to see. I love that you had called out about our city entrances. That, I think, is a really great place to begin and to look at that as their first impression and also a last impression as you leave the city as well. And then finally, I think you called out there having a signature event. I think that is really crucial. I'd love to see us working on something like that. And as you called out, Issaquah have Salmon Days, and other cities, Bellevue have like their arts and crafts. Yeah. So I think as Sammamish, if we had something like that, other than our 4th of July, which is a big, big event here, if we had like a signature event, and I think as a community that we could all get around, and maybe not necessarily in the summer months, because I think July, a lot of our residents are on vacation and out of town, but it would be at a time of the year when most of us are home. And to your point, moving events around the calendar and not everything just in the sunshiny days. But I'd look forward to hear more about a signature event. I think that sounds very exciting, and I think it would be I think it would be an idea to kind of bond our community together. So thank you so much. I really loved reading it, and I read it all, and thank you.
Thank you.
She's showing off just a tiny bit. Councilmember Gupta.
Yeah, thank you. I'll echo Councilmember Farrell's comments. This is incredibly exciting. I also read the whole plan. Yeah, no, it was great to see. I enjoyed seeing the inventory of the public parks, or the public art, having all the pictures, having the places, having little blurbs. I read stuff about things I've seen for years, and I was like, I had no idea. That's amazing. So I'm sure that'll be very useful to our community as well. I really liked Chapter 3, especially pages 28 and 30, 28 to 30, where it lays out everything in terms of goals, strategies, and implementation tools. That was where I felt like it really snapped for me, like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. This is, I'm really impressed. I did struggle a little bit on the executive summary on 12 and 13. I think I left comments there, but it was kind of hard for me to parse. But then when I got later down further in the plan, I was like, oh, okay, now it's starting to make sense. On the table of future projects, the stage at the former CWU building, this may be a question for staff, but is that not suitable for practice for performing arts? I was just curious since that was not highlighted.
With that building, there is a lot to be figured out at this point.
Sure.
So,
oh, okay, so that's it. Okay.
Yeah, we can look at it in the future.
If I may, Councilmember, you're just a little bit ahead of us on that one. I think when the bulk of the planning work went on, that was not available at that point in time, and so it wasn't necessarily included. I think all the concepts and the ideas and all that kind of stuff are still valid, but where those happen, I think, as things change, I think the locations might be different if and when we get there.
Sure, thank you. That's helpful. On the comparison cities, it was First of all, that was really helpful to see what all the different cities had done. I saw that Woodinville had a public spaces commission, so it's like arts and then also streetscapes and placemaking. I was just curious if the arts commission seemed like they had any appetite or interest in that. That seemed like something that could be done in Sammamish.
We didn't talk about this specifically, but I kind of love it because I'm a public space kind of person. But I think, all these things are related, and you can slice it up in different ways, whatever works best for your city. Bothell does a funny thing with the tourism, and I don't think you guys really necessarily want to be a tourist city, but every city has its different personality, and I think the public spaces is pretty interesting. I think I like that they're housed in parks, so I think that's really good. And what you call them, I wouldn't change it for now, but I think I agree with you. That's a really interesting approach to thinking about public space.
And lastly, I think a couple of times it calls out that other cities have done a 1% for arts from construction for capital projects, but I don't think it specifically spelled out what that is. So I wonder if a little bit more specificity in.
Yeah, and there's very different kinds of 1% for the arts. Some cities have done it on certain things like public utilities. Others, it's a development thing. So others, like if you're doing fire stations, 1% of that has to go for arts. And then there's a question of whether that percent for the art has to go to the thing. So if you built a new fire station, does the art have to go to the fire station? Redmond, I think, is an interesting example because they've collected their percent for the art and decide it's a pool, and then they decide which thing to go to. So it doesn't necessarily have to go to the project that generated the funding. But I think you also have to make sure that whatever the 1% is of, that it's worth the effort of doing it. Because if you really don't have that much, infrastructure to get the 1% from, it just might be an exercise that just isn't worth the trouble.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for making the comments.
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you for the plan. I think this will be really helpful for the commissioners to have a roadmap. I just had a couple things that I wanted to ask about, and one of them is funding. I know that in previous years we had dollars set aside for an acquisition fund for public art, and I assume that's going away due to our budget. Is that correct?
We had a set budget for one particular piece of public art in our capital fund, and that, yes, no longer exists.
Okay. So I'll assume that in general won't be there because there wasn't really any mention about setting aside dollars other than perhaps for a capital project, so 1%, but there wasn't like an actual fund.
Right. So how that would work is there is the operating budget, which the Arts Commission can use for everything else mentioned here, whether it's events or art classes in parks and all of that. And from time to time, if there is a desire to do a piece of public art, then council could determine that, like staff could propose a budget and council could authorize it to be allocated from the general fund into a capital improvement plan.
Okay. So it does sound like, and you even mentioned it, that there are dollars left on the table for grants and that we should be applying for it. So that's really great. And it sounds like if we can have workshops for the commissioners, and I think you mentioned that they learn how to do grant writing.
Yeah.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, and because you are a contract city, you could have somebody really spend a few hours that knows the grant scenario out there, which is a little bit challenging these days. But the county has the Doors Open funding has been a real wonderful thing, and I think it's important to apply. So you could bring in a little help really easily and get some of those knocked out, and it would be well worth paying for the help.
Okay. And my only other question was, there was mentioning about investing in functional art, and there would be like some sort of matrix in determining like what type of art gets purchased. does that take into account, because art's very subjective, and I'm a designer, and so people are very opinionated when it comes to art. So does that matrix somehow get to the root of, like, philosophically how the commissioners plan on deciding, like, what areas of art, even if it's functional, to purchase? Like, let's say, like, somebody wants to do, like, I only want to pick people that are from the state of Washington, or I only want to choose people that are really well recognized. So perhaps that's coming back in the future.
We didn't get into a level of detail about which, whether it has to be a bench or it has to be an artist from, Sammamish, but I think really the key to it is breadth, so that you don't only do one kind of art, that you don't just have, I think you want to have a mix of local Sammamish artists, but also to bring people in that are nationally known, so that you have a mix of things. I think that's usually the best, and the matrix really is to make sure that you are getting different kinds of art in different places and serve different communities. But that's as specific as it gets.
Okay, maybe it might get a little bit more specific as that gets worked on.
Okay, if you have more thoughts on that, that would be helpful.
Okay,
Thanks.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Others, council? I aggressively skimmed this, and I actually struggled with the tool to try to leave comments. It kept booting me out.
Oh.
Yeah, and asking for my password again. But I'm not going to burden you with my technical issues. What I was going to ask about was, we probably already have artists in residence here. So is there the idea of a directory that people could upload themselves into, their portfolio-ishness, something along those lines?
Speak to that?
And just thought that would be a thing.
Yeah, so we have been working on that, which is great. We've collected groups of artists, different nonprofits, individual artists. The Artist Spotlight is one way that we have slowly started to reach some of those folks by opening that communication up for folks to come to us. And so it'll continue to grow. The list will forever change and morph, and hopefully our commissioners can do a little bit of outreach, but we do have a pretty nice list started, and hopefully it'll continue to grow.
Well, what would drive people to actually get involved and put their name on that list is if they thought they could get a show. So if there was an opportunity for them to actually show their work, that would be a driver. It would also give you a date to drive towards. So that was something that I thought of, the idea of traveling shows. There may be art that's passing through our region, being able to know about it so that we could coalesce around something that's coming through the region and having it stop here. To create an event around that could be useful. I think that was mostly, oh, no, I had one more. It had to do with tribal art. You have a picture of the piece of art that's actually in the hallway over there. And the comment we've gotten from the Snoqualmie tribe, it references Native art. It is not Native art. And I just want to make sure that whatever we are doing is culturally sensitive and on top of it. I actually believe that the art all needs to be replaced because this is Alaskan.
Yeah.
So.
Are you referring to the glass piece outside?
No, I'm referring to the signage inside.
Got it, okay. Well,
because it was commented on by the tribe.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, and we did know that. Yeah, and there also is, in the toolkit, there is a piece on the best practices for decommissioning art, so.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot on that. I do have contacts for you guys for you to talk to the correct person for the Snoqualmie tribe, for example, who actually oversees this type of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing, just because I just want to make sure we close the loop on this and don't just kind of not address it. I do think the toolkit is probably the best thing out there. It is outstanding. It's going to save everybody's life.
Good.
It's perfect.
Well, I'm excited to see how it plays out, and we wanted to make sure that they get to take it for a spin to see, to make sure it works for them and their processes, but I think it'll be really, really helpful.
Councilmember Gupta.
Yes, sorry, one more question. The list of organizations at the very end of the appendix, is that going to be updated? Is that planned to be updated at some regular cadence? Or is that the same list that we were just talking about?
Yeah, I mean, there's more list than that. Those are organizations. We didn't want to put individual names on there. But the one that the city has, that Emily has, is a living document, and we hope it grows. I think this is kind of a snapshot in time. But we did look at all the artist rosters that are out there, the For Culture information, who's applied for grants. So we really did try and find as many people as we could. I think, the next circle is those people know people that are, doing something cool in their garage or whatever that aren't really publicly known. So I think if you do have some magnets for artists, like you were saying, calls for art, the grant program, artist spotlight, those kinds of things. And, maybe there's a, once a quarter get together for the people that you found as artists where they can come together and see if there is the desire to get a nonprofit going or what kinds of things would help them. Would a grant writer help them? But I think really nurturing your creative community could be really exciting.
Well, thank you. I think this was a really helpful presentation, and I'm really pleased with the work that's been poured into this, and it's clear it's a lot of work. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be moving next to finish off some more unfinished business with Mike Sugg discussing approving the placement of a county-wide ballot measure before voters in 2025 for a funding levy to support Medic One.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Mike Sugg, analyst in the City Manager's Office. You'll recall during your meeting on April 1st, King County Public Health presented on a proposed 6-year countywide emergency medical services levy, which would replace the existing 6-year levy that is due to expire at the end of this year. If approved, the levy would generate $1.5 billion over the 6-year period and is estimated to cost the homeowner of a median value home in Sammamish approximately $357 annually, an increase of about $40 annually over the current levy. Last month, the county executive transmitted the EMS levy proposal to the county council for the review, which is currently ongoing. And before the county council can actually place the levy on the ballot, state law first requires that at least 75% of cities over 50,000 population approve placing it on the ballot. So that's where we come in. Sammamish is one of 11 such cities. Following Public Health's presentation to council last month, council members appeared to be in agreement to bring back a resolution to consider approving placement of the levy on the ballot. The draft resolution is included in the meeting packet, and staff are recommending approval of the resolution this evening. And with that short introduction, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Mayor Howell.
So, Council, do you have questions about this levy? If you do not, I would entertain a motion as soon as someone can find it. I can help you with that if you haven't found it. Has someone
sure.
found it?
I move that we approve the resolution of placing the countywide ballot measure before voters in 2025 for a funding levy to support Medic One / emergency medical services for the period from January 1st, 2026 through December 31st, 2031, pursuant to RCW 84.52.069.
Second.
First and seconded. Do you want to speak to your motion?
No.
If not, then let's vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And look at that penny showing up again.
It does feel a bit lonely up here at this big table.
You need to be on a different commission, I guess, to have more people.
I have lots of microphones to choose from. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Thank you for bearing with me. Let's see, there we go. All right, good evening, Mayor, Council, David Pyle, Department of Community Development. This evening, I have for you a workshop on some minor code cleanup that is in following our 2025 docket that was put into effect last fall in 2024. If you recall, we had identified that when we were adopting our comprehensive plan and implementing development regulations, that we identified the need for potentially adjusting and cleaning up some of the regulations. This is the first round of these code amendments. We do anticipate a follow-on round after the summer recess, when we potentially identify some additional things that might need to be adjusted in order to continue to have things make sense for various scales of development or proposals. This effort started in March with the Planning Commission, continued in April with the Planning Commission, where they made a recommendation, and we are now here with the City Council on May 6th. And we are I should have updated this slide. We have moved the proposed public hearing to the first meeting in June, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. I do want to highlight that there are 2 batches of amendments that made their way through the Planning Commission. We have since merged those into one. The reason why we started off with 2 batches was that we had identified code changes that were pretty simple, straightforward adjustments that we really didn't think that the Commission would want to debate. And we had identified some additional code amendments that we thought there might be some additional conversation on. So we wanted to get those out of the way that we felt really wouldn't result in any conversation, and then allow for us to focus on those that we thought the Commission might want to have more conversation about, and where we might want to talk about adjusting before bringing back for a public hearing. Again, the objective, this basically is implementing the 2025 docket. These are all intended to be minor. Some of them are a little more complex than others, although we do stand by as staff that these are all very minor adjustments. The first batch is found in Exhibit 2 in the May 6 packet. I do want to highlight that one of those, line number 3 in that table, was updated. I think on Monday I pushed out an update to the packet, and that was in discovery. I was rereading through all these and preparing for this evening's presentation, and I noticed an error in one of the strike drafts. So that item 3 has since been adjusted from what the Planning Commission saw. So I just did want to highlight that for you, that the text might look slightly different. It has to do with the relationship between the middle housing overlay and the underlying R zones. That in order for us to later enact or utilize the middle housing overlay, we need to mention it up higher in the code. It's really a structural thing with the code language. Happy to answer any questions about that. But aside from that, there are no changes included in Exhibit 2 from what the Planning Commission recommended. The next one is in Exhibit 3, and these are proposed amendments to the definitions section. We needed to add a definition of area median income. We do have this in the town center code. Oh, and I want to highlight that none of these changes affect anything related to the town center. So I just want to be clear about that. These are all in the section of Title 21 that are outside of the town center. Want to be clear. This one was bringing the definition of area median income that already exists in the town center code over into the affordable housing chapter. We realized that through the shuffle of code amendments that we were putting into effect, that we failed to also add that to the affordable housing section, which would be an important place to include it. The other item is one that we interestingly run into quite a bit here, and this is a debate about when a tree is a hedge and when a hedge is a tree. So we wanted to clarify this. We spend a lot of time on this with neighbors and property owners, and it is something that usually is the result of a neighbor disagreement that we end up, a neighbor who might feel aggrieved wants us to call it a tree and wants us to enforce the code, but a property owner who wants to take action and change their landscaping on their property wants to call it a hedge and has maintained it as a hedge. So this hopefully will help resolve that going forward. Another item in Exhibit 4 was the final subdivision process change. This is one that you've heard about before. And what this does is it looks to move the assigned responsible authority for review and approval of a final subdivision to the hearing examiner, who is the authority who does review preliminary subdivisions. Many cities do it this way. It was put in place back in 2017. The legislature explicitly allowed cities to designate who the authority should be through Senate Bill 5674. And the section RCW 5817-100 explicitly allows this to happen. A good example of a city that is doing this is Bothell. They allow for a preliminary subdivision to be reviewed by staff and a recommendation to be made to the hearing examiner on preliminary subdivision. And then once all of the requirements of that subdivision have been met, it is then passed off to the application for final subdivision is made, staff review it, and staff make recommendation to the hearing examiner again, who ultimately reviews and approves the final subdivision. We did reach out to the hearing examiner, and he did say that he is familiar with this. He serves as the hearing examiner for Bothell, and he had some ideas about how to make this, how to facilitate this happening if the council chose to designate him as the responsible authority for review. It is something that many cities and counties do. It's not uncommon, and in fact, that was the purpose of SB 5674. Again, our proposal is that the short subdivision final, there was one other amendment that's being made with this bundle in Exhibit 4. We wanted to clarify the difference between a short subdivision and a long subdivision or a larger project. So we did add some additional cleanup language. It was unclear in the code when we were talking about a short subdivision versus a subdivision. So if you look at the exhibit, you'll see there were some additional amendments made to really clarify that this is what a short subdivision is, and this is what the process for it is, and this is what a long subdivision is, and this is what the process is. The code was also confused around the difference between the concept of a subdivision versus a plat. A plat, all a plat is a drawing. The plat is what gets adopted, like if you were looking at the Inglewood plat, for example, that is the drawing of Inglewood. If you were to look at the Carrier subdivision, that is the plat, that is the drawing that gets recorded with the county assessor. A subdivision is the action of dividing the land, and that happens in two phases, preliminary and final. The final, when that's approved, ultimately authorizes the signing of the plat document to be recorded with the county. So those terms are often confused, and we wanted to clarify that in the code. Hence, you'll see the amendments that are included with Exhibit 4. Exhibit 5, these are really just meant to clarify some standards. There are some challenges that we have. We have a lot of different variations of projects that we see, and oftentimes we're stumped, if you will, as to how to apply the code to a certain design. Our immediate recourse is to issue a code interpretation. However, we don't like to just fill up our files with code interpretations. We'd rather fix code sections that are difficult to apply. So the first one of these is the building height measurement tool that we had adopted with our Phase 2 development regulations. is really difficult to administer and quite costly because of the survey costs that go along with it. And we are proposing to move to a simplified single plane measurement that would establish an average existing grade. We're not proposing to change from existing to finished or anything else. We just simply are looking at measuring around the building where it intersects the ground. That creates a plane of existing grade prior to finished grade. And then you measure up to 35 feet from that point. It is how a lot of other cities do it. It's pretty common, and it's actually pretty easy to implement, and actually more easy for us to inspect to and to verify that they are meeting that requirement. The next is with regard to maximum sidewall heights. With development regs phase 2 in 2021, December of 2021, we adopted a standard that requires that walls that are taller than 24 feet in height have to be set back a certain distance from the side yard setback line. It did not specify how far or when that was determined to be met. So we are proposing that that a side wall is any wall that is generally parallel to a side lot line and located closer than 2 feet to a 5 yard, so 7 feet, if you will, or 4 feet to a larger side setback. So what this does is it helps us understand when that additional setback is required to create modulation. It also creates space where you could put something like mechanical equipment or other things, and creates design details in a building that results in not just having a solid wall at 5 feet. The concern back in 2021 was that you'd have a 35-foot wall at 5 feet right off your property line. So in this case, if you're closer than 2 feet to a 5 yard side yard setback, the wall can be no taller than 24 feet. So if you're further than that, then you can go to 35 feet. What that does is it brings roof lines down, it adds hips to roofs, and it adds additional architectural details to buildings to try and diminish the size of a wall, if you will. So this is just clarifying when that is met. It was not clarified prior. Another one, which is an interesting one, is the measurement of a combination of a fence and a retaining wall. We often see debates with property owners and neighbors about how tall something actually is. The code did not identify how the two are really to work in conjunction. So we are wanting to, and this is everything in blue here is a planning commission recommendation, is that we had said previously 2 feet of vegetated set or landscape setback. And they wanted us to change that, because if you're the one who owns the fence on the uphill side and you own the wall as well, how are you going to maintain the landscaping on the other side of the fence? And they didn't want it to turn into a blackberry bramble. So they wanted it to simply say maintained setback from the back of the retaining wall. And that helps us with code enforcement, because if we have a situation where the area between the fence and the wall is not being maintained and somebody's got blackberries spilling down into their yard, well, we could actually work with the property owner to pursue maintenance of that. I think that was an important part to the Planning Commission. This next one is a bit more complicated, and I should have said at the beginning, we start off easy and we get progressively more complicated. This one is code cleanup that relates to our step housing and our emergency and permanent supportive housing requirements. If you recall, as part of updating our comprehensive plan, adopting our comprehensive plan, and the implementing development regulations, in December, we reviewed all of the comments we'd received from the various agencies that were interested. One of the letters that we received was from the State Department of Commerce, who is ultimately the one that reviews our compliance with the state's housing rules, HB 1110 and HB 1220. The Department of Commerce provided a letter, and we responded to all of those comments. Then after adoption in January, we received another letter from them that included a whole long list of other comments that we did not receive before we adopted the comp plan. So, and that there's various reasons there. I'm not going to throw Commerce under the bus here. We since worked with them pretty closely and worked through the long list of comments that they had, and they retracted almost all of their comments except one, which was around our capacity for permanent supportive housing and emergency housing. And we do agree with their comment. One of the challenges is that we had added as part of our existing code that we adopted in December that no permanent supportive housing facilities can be located within 1 mile of another permanent supportive housing facility or emergency shelter, and that no more than 10 persons at a time could be accommodated. And these are also limited by the zoning in which they're allowed to be located. So if you look around the city at the zoning of where these are allowed, and then you assign a 1 mile separation, and then you limit them to 10 persons per facility, you very quickly realize that we do not have capacity. We're not meeting our capacity requirement as handed down to us through our affordable housing allocation and our permanent supportive housing facility allocation. So we did a map exercise, and we started looking at, well, what would be feasible? And we identified that if we were to remove the occupancy limits and we were to change the separation requirements to a 1/4 mile for permanent supportive housing and emergency housing, that we would have capacity. We also identified that previously we had a requirement in the code that it had to be within 1 mile of, a 1/2 mile of a transit stop. We identified that it should be within a 1/2 mile of a transit stop, and the commission agreed with that change. The idea there is that we don't know where our transit stops are going to ultimately start to grow over time, and we would sure like to see any emergency housing that might be built in the city located within a distance that's walkable to a transit stop, because that is really an important part of it. If we're doing supportive housing or emergency housing, oftentimes the residents of those housing developments are in a situation where they can't own a car. So really being able to get to access to transit is important. So we said should be, because if we said it's required, well, how many transit stops do we actually have in the city, and how then does that further limit our capacity? So it's this fine line we're walking. I did go through these with Commerce last week. They agree with these changes. They think that we've done a good job addressing these. They also commended us on all of the work that we've done with housing in the city and with our comprehensive plan. And they agreed with these changes. They did identify that we should reconsider some of the other facility requirements. If you look in the code in Exhibit 7, you'll see there is a long list of things that an operator has to do, including how amenities are provided, how operations happen. And Commerce indicated that they felt that that was redundant, that usually these types of facilities that are being built have very strict standards applied to them by funding, and that the state already requires those things, and that the city should consider removal of that. So that is something we will roll into our second round of code updates for later this fall. I want to work with Commerce on that to better understand what they're saying. And if there is merit there, we should consider as a city looking at where to trim those down so that it is not so redundant that that a provider is first required to show the state that they're doing it, and then they have to go through that whole process again to get a permit to be located in the city. So just wanted to flag that for you as something that might come back to you. Finally, in Exhibit 8, we're getting into the affordable housing, the inclusionary affordable housing chapter 2110. These really are some basic cleanups. Applicability stated twice. The affordable requirements are stated twice. The fee in lieu requirements are listed in the wrong section, and the square footage calculation needed some clarification. So we went through and made changes to address those simple cleanups. None of those changed the outcomes or the exemption levels or the fee in lieu levels. These were really just cleanups that help us have a functional code that's readable and usable and everyone understands. There was another section that we were, upon adoption of our affordable housing in lieu fee, asked to consider, and this is based on a letter that we got from master builders, if you recall, that we should consider changing the exemption for the fee in lieu, or excuse me, for the participation in the inclusionary affordable housing program to 1,500 square feet from 1,000 square feet. We also identified some other changes that might be needed for exemptions. What about a home that's being torn down and rebuilt? We had a challenge with how the code was structured with fractional units. If you recall, we identified that there was kind of this no-go zone between 0.5 and 0.9 because of rounding, and that it was a disproportionate burden on a project of 5 lots compared to a project of 9 lots that were required to build one unit regardless of whether it was 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, or 0.9. So we looked at changing rounding to just round all the way up to get to a whole unit. And then finally, how additions should be considered. So in working through this, we took the last one off. We found that additions should just be considered as an existing unit, and if you wanted to do an addition to your home, that was that. It's an existing home. We also recommended to the Planning Commission, and they ultimately, after quite a bit of debate, recommended a 1,500 square foot exemption. They also recommended to exempt homes that are being rebuilt. So if your home burns down and you're rebuilding it, you're not subject to that. If you're tearing down a home and rebuilding it, you're not subject to that. Basically an existing one down, one up, that there's no net change. Although I will say that oftentimes that is associated with an enlargement of the home when it's being rebuilt. That's just how it is. And then finally, we are clarifying with the rounding that if you have 0.1 all the way up to 0.9, that you pay the fee in lieu. You could always choose to build a unit if you wanted to, but you're not required to until you get to a whole unit. So by example, if you were doing a 4-unit middle housing project, you would be required to pay a fee in lieu on the total square footage of that development. But if you were doing a 10-lot subdivision, you would be required to you'd be required to build 9 market units and 1 affordable unit, right? That's how that would pencil out. If you had, say, 24 units, if you were doing a 24-unit development, then you would be required to build 22 market units, 2 affordable units, and you'd be required to pay the fee in lieu on 4 of the units worth of square footage. So that's how that sort of pairs up, whole units versus fractional. Finally, the Planning Commission also recommended adding an additional exemption for individual property owners who are pursuing building a new home on their own property. For example, say you bought a lot here 15 years ago and were always planning on building your house here, and you're finally at a point in your life where you want to build your house, that as an individual owner, a builder, that you should not be required to pay the in lieu fee for that 0.1 fractional unit for the square footage of that home, that you should be exempted from that. The challenge there that we identified, we talked through it with the commission, was that that is difficult to administer. They did recognize that it's not going to be perfect, that there will be some who say it's their property, they're going to live in it, and that they will then immediately sell it once it's built. We do have a similar requirement with shoreline properties, where shoreline rules only exempt residential construction from a shoreline substantial development permit, which is quite a lengthy process to get through. It requires a hearing with the hearing examiner, and you're eligible for an exemption to build a new single-family home if you are doing it for your own home. It's not a spec home. It's not a an investment property that you're going to immediately sell. And we do have challenges because more often than not, the person that builds it immediately sells it once they build it. So it was an investment. They flipped it. But you can't control the world, so it is what it is. And that's the conclusion the commission came to, is that they really would like to provide some relief to those people who are just trying to make their way and add a home in Sammamish to live in. That was, if I summarize their conversation, that was the premise. Finally, the final one is removing the lot coverage from density. This is a remnant of our regulating lot coverage in the past. Now we regulate hardscape. So we really just wanted to clean this up. This is something that we meant to strike back in December, but we didn't. So hence the cleanup. Finally, the Planning Commission recommended moving forward with, in tonight's packet, Exhibits 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. They recommended amendments to Exhibits 6, 7, and 8. And they included additional comments and statements of concern regarding Chapter 2110, the city's inclusionary affordable housing requirement. If you haven't had a chance to watch that meeting video, highly recommend it. A lot of really good conversation, and the commission is really interested in making sure that different perspectives are considered, put it that way. The commission did request that direction from the city council be given to staff to add evaluation of appropriateness of the affordable housing requirements to the city's work plan, and direct staff to bring this program back to the Planning Commission for evaluation and potential modification or removal. So I just wanted to make sure to flag that for you, because it is something that they did ask, and part of my job is to make sure I'm transmitting what I'm hearing from the commission to the council. So I'll leave that there. And our next steps are, we have a public hearing scheduled for June 3rd of 2025. I do anticipate receiving a letter from Department of Commerce outlining that they believe our changes are adequate with regard to STEP and emergency housing, transitional and emergency housing, or permanent supportive and emergency housing, and that we are in the process of finalizing the Commerce Review notification, which is standard with code amendments, and SEPA, and doing public noticing for that hearing. So with that, I turn it back over to you, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. That was a lot. And so Councilmember Stewart is first up.
Excellent. Thank you, David. That was a lot, but very thorough. Two comments. One is on the one down, one up. I totally get the, if something happens to your home and you have to rebuild it, I do think there should be something in there that there's some fee for a differential. So if I tear down my house, my 1,000 square foot house, and I build a 4,000 square foot house, there should be some fee on that differential.
And it wouldn't be hard to add a code section or a string in there that says that for replacement homes, that a fee in lieu shall be paid using the adopted fee for the differential square footage.
Yeah, and then the other one is, I don't know that I'm fully on board with the exemption for people who are building their own homes. Unless there was some way to put something on the title that said they had to own it for a certain period of time, and if they sold it in less time than that, there'd be a fee applied or something. I'm not in favor of that. I think if we're all in on affordable housing, we're all in. So those are just my comments.
And I also wanted to draw your attention to an email that should be in your inbox that was submitted by a party who attended the meeting with the Planning Commission in April. Colin, I think is his name, and he grew up in Sammamish, and he provided a letter indicating the impact that affordable housing fees have on him. I'm just making sure to transmit that to you all. So just wanted you to be aware of that and to add that to your consideration, just like any other comments you might receive from the public.
Councilmember, other comments? Councilmember Gupta.
Yeah, thank you. Very thorough, very helpful. I really appreciate it. I understand the challenge that you talked us through about the fractional units and the 0.5 versus 0.9. Is the moving all fractional units to the fee in lieu, is that staff's recommendation as well as the Planning Commission?
That is staff's recommendation. Yeah, we have heard, we have received quite a bit of interest in middle housing, which we haven't had any takers yet, but we have received quite a bit of interest in middle housing, both from existing Sammamish residents, those who have been here for 30 years, those who have been here for 5 years. And it's refreshing to see. However, they are looking at things like the exemptions and the fractional units as some of the drivers. So if you recall in the past, we discussed the role that what was the term, carrot sticks and partnerships has on the delivery of different housing types. So one thing to consider, and this is one thing I've been trying to explain to customers that we've been talking to, and we now have a middle housing page that we set up, and we're working through, we have an affordable housing page that we've set up. And one of the things to consider is that if you raise the exemption to 1,500 square feet and someone wants to build a single family home on their property, traditionally, then they're going to pay the fee for it, right? But if somebody wanted to build a single family home that incorporated 2 accessory dwelling units into it, which really is framing, electrical, plumbing, right? There are some costs to that. And they wanted to, instead of building a 4,500 square foot traditional single family home, build a 4,500 square foot more ADU compatible single family home. They could use it as if it was a 4,500 square foot home, but then it would be compatible down the line with different uses. You could then rent out one of the units or 2 of the units, or you could rent all 3 of the units, and you'd have basically 3. You could do 3 1,500 square foot units in the home. It'd basically be kind of like a triplex. It depends how you design it, and you wouldn't pay the fee. So there's that. Or if you wanted to build a 2,000 square foot primary unit and a 1,500 square foot accessory dwelling unit attached to it, and you could operate it like a home if you wanted to, or you could separate them by closing off and partitioning the space, then you'd only be paying the fee on 2,000 square feet. So this actually serves a purpose in trying to change the type of housing that is being built in the city. And we've explained that to customers. That's not to say that people aren't impacted by it, and that they want to build what they want to build, and they feel like they're being told by the city that they have to build something different. So it is a bit of a shift in thinking, and we're working through that now. Not everybody's happy. Some people want to just pay the fee and go on their way. Others want to try to figure out how to redesign it to make it work. But really, we're trying to get to the point of filling that missing middle housing stock that we just don't see being built in the city. And this is one of the tools that we have told customers that we are trying to use to get there.
Great, thank you. And I would echo Councilmember Stewart's concerns about the additional exemption for individual property owners building a new home, especially hearing what you're saying, where that we are walking into it knowing that that's going to be a loophole that has been exploited, on the shoreline. I don't see, if that's the case, I don't see how and why that wouldn't continue to be the case here.
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
So I agree with largely what's been said. For people that are rebuilding, there needs to be like whatever, if they're going from 2,000 and they want to rebuild to like 4,000, I don't know what that is. Like there needs to be a limit where like they need to pay the fee. I also do not support the additional amendment that on a vacant lot that they're exempt. We're trying to, like you were saying, we're trying to build smaller. We're trying to build more diverse units. In the last 10 years, we've built nothing really, but really large single-family homes. The average square footage of the homes that have been built in the last 10 years have been like 3,000 to 4,000 plus. And, you know, people will come in and they'll want to build those like 4,000, 5,000 square foot homes. And that is not, I don't believe, the goal of what we're planning, what we want to do when we want to create more smaller units and more diverse units.
Love to hear from other council members if you have thoughts. And if not, I'll give you some time and I'll share my thoughts with you, David. So it used to be in the 50s, and yeah, I kind of have a memory of that, that homes were under 1,000 square, what? Sorry? Okay. That in the 50s, homes for 3.5 people were under 1,000 square feet. And that was normal. And then over time that climbed and grew to that well over 2,000 square feet now is more the norm. So I think the norm is around 2,200 square feet. Is that the norm? I think if that's what I've heard. I'm in favor of the 1,500 square feet myself, and feel that we should drive to that. You know, the comment that we received earlier, it's unclear to me what the size of the house is that this person wants to build. Do you happen to know that, David?
I don't. I do know that it is more than 1,000 and more than 1,500. I did speak with this individual, Colin is his name, about you know, the different options of building combined units, where you might build the primary unit of 2,000 and maybe a 1,500 square foot if we added this exemption ADU. And the you know, the perspective was that, well, that's not really the product I wanted to build, and it wasn't, you know, a negative thing. It was just really a very real answer of that's just not what I was wanting to build. Disappointment, right? And you know, this is someone who, you know, there were several comments along those lines delivered to the Planning Commission as part of their meeting when they held a public hearing. And a lot of that is, I think the commission was trying to find a solution to what they were hearing from those that provided comment. And it's something the commission does, is they really try real hard to find a way to achieve what we're trying to achieve, but also, you know, help community members by addressing some of the concerns that are raised. It's not always possible, and this is a very difficult thing for us. We've been through a lot to get here, and there's a lot of different ways to look at this.
Yes, and I appreciate that it can look like an impinging on a personal freedom of some kind and a deep desire, but also the fact that, you know, times change. And as we progress and move on, and as land use requirements change, we have to adapt with it and abide by law as well, and be cognizant of our responsibility to what we have to do. So we can't make everybody happy. I mean, personally, I love the creative solutions that you have come up with, in effect creating a family compound. That sounds extraordinarily attractive, and that's a lot of flexibility right there. So there are options. It's not like we're not willing to work with individuals. It's more trying to find a way to make this work within our requirements to try to achieve that smaller footprint and that middle housing that we simply don't have. Council, other questions for David? Do you feel like you have direction?
Yes, so I'm hearing, what I'm hearing, and if there's any objections to this is what I want to know is to add a new string to the code that addresses the differential from a tear down rebuild in square footage. And I'm hearing that there is, excuse me, the general sentiment that I'm getting is that we probably are not inclined to add that additional exemption for an existing single-family homeowner, and we'll bring that back as part of the public hearing, or you could tell me now to take it off if you wanted to take to, you know.
If there's an objection, we need to hear it now.
If anyone objects to me removing that.
Okay, well, then, Councilmember Treen, would you like to speak to that objection then? No. You just, okay.
All right, yeah, I'll speak to it. It's pretty clear. There's definitely a population, or there's people within residents in the city of Sammamish who would like to be able to take their property and do with it as they have the right to do. So if I take down a 2,000 square foot home and put a 4,000 square foot home on a 2,000 square foot footprint, and I just do a 2-story building, how are you gonna treat that one then?
So what was the
So if I want a 4,000 square foot home, heck, I got 1,000 square foot, and I go 3 stories high or 4 stories high, I make the height limit, I have 4,000 square foot house now. But my footprint's exactly the same as the one I just tore down.
So under the proposal, you would pay a fee in lieu for the differential. So say the original house was 2,000 square feet.
So now affordable housing is now increased. So when I go to sell that home, the cost of that home now is more because of a fee in lieu that is making it so that it's not affordable. So so maybe then I only build it half as big. So again, it comes down to, I just think it comes down to someone's right versus, yeah, you can pass policy, that's fine, you can do that too. I don't disagree with you on that. So the council can decide that this is the policy they want to do. I just find that it achieves the exact opposite of what you're trying to do. So I object to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that by any chance, or were we going to just?
Well, I think that the way the code is currently set up is if you were to tear down a house and rebuild it, it's silent. And we take that as currently kind of like the way we were anticipating applying it was like we do with impact fees, which is one down, one up. However, if somebody's tearing it down and enlarging it, then they are also, adding square footage, changing land economics and the dynamics, and that would be the point where you would probably apply the fee in lieu to the additional square footage. But if somebody was to tear down the house and build 2 1,500 square foot middle housing units, they would be exempt. If they were to tear down the house and build 3 1,500 square foot middle housing units, they would be exempt. It's really, I think, trying to get us to shift away from that single family unit, which is somebody's right, like you said. It's a fine line, and we're trying to navigate our way through this. And we're trying to promote and incentivize middle housing typologies and smaller units and ADUs. But that comes at the cost of regulating single-family homes. That's how I understand the program to work. That's my description of it.
Okay, we have a couple more buttons that have come alive here. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard repeatedly that people want the builders to pay, and I think with the one down, one up, there's no clause in there that says it has to be the homeowner, right? It could be a developer that tears down the house and builds a new one. So I think that having this, you pay the differential or you build the 2 middle housing units and then you're exempt, is exactly what we're looking for. And same with developing any lot, if there's nothing that's going to prevent someone from just building it and flipping it, then this is exactly what the public's been asking us to do. So I support the not having an exemption for building on a vacant lot, a single vacant lot, and if you're going to tear something down, or if you have to rebuild because there's been a fire, as long as you don't go above what you had before, I think that's fine. If you're going to go beyond that, you pay the differential. So,
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
So I'm not clear on why Councilmember Train thinks that that this is infringing on somebody building whatever size they want to build. They could build a 10,000 square foot home. They have every right to do that, and they can. They just need to pay the difference into an affordable housing fee.
So thank you actually to council for everybody participating in the conversation, because that's a large part what I'm looking for, and I think that it's extraordinarily helpful to David to get a breadth of perspectives.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll do my best to try and craft some changes to what was brought forward this evening and
Very
bring
good.
those back on June 3rd. And if anybody is interested in further dialogue on this, I'm more than happy to talk about it and to get a better understanding of perspectives. It's always really helpful for me, so thank you.
Great, and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
We are now moving on to council reports and city manager report. City manager, would you like to kick off?
Sure, happy to. Thank you, Mayor. Believe it or not, we are in May, and with being in May comes the start of the farmers market. So as a reminder, tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m., the farmers market kicks off for the 2025 season. We're very excited to continue to be a strong partner with the Chamber of Commerce to put the farmers market on, and we're excited to invite everybody out to the plaza tomorrow to be a part of that. A couple other exciting things that are happening. On Saturday, May 10th, the Sound Transit Redmond Extension is opening for the public. And so there's a big event at the downtown Redmond station for those that want to be a part of that and go down, and you can ride the train. So I think not till afternoon, but the trains will be available to start riding from the downtown station as of Saturday at noon. So I invite everyone to come down for that. And on the roads and rigs theme, the city has Rigapalooza coming up on Saturday, May 17th, right outside of City Hall on the plaza from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's a great family event. Bring the kids out, and with fingers crossed that the weather will continue to hold up and be like it was today. So, Mayor, with that, that's everything I had. Back to you. Oh, I'm sorry. I have one more thing. I apologize. The Lewis Thompson project, in order to meet the construction window schedule, we will be going down to one lane for 4 weeks in August in order to be able to get that done. We'll be sending out messaging and notice, but we just want to let everyone know that that will be coming a little bit later this summer. But that will allow us to shrink down the construction time pretty substantially by doing that. So we ask for everyone's patience as we do that, knowing that there will be positive when it's all done. It's going to be great. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I have one question for the city manager. When you said bring the kids out, what is the age limit on kids? Am I, like...
It's council members for the young and young at heart.
Okay, thank you. Good. I was worried I wasn't allowed to come. I have 3 things. One is it was very exciting in our last GMPB meeting to vote to approve Sammamish's comprehensive plan for certification. So that was very exciting, and I'm sorry David already left. Wanted to. Oh, is he there? Oh. Congratulations, that was a big, heavy lift. We have a Eastside Fire and Rescue Board meeting on Thursday. There are 2 items we're going to be voting on. One is to approve allowing advisory seats for the contract cities on the board, so they'll be allowed to come and participate in discussion. They won't be voting members, but that's something we'll be voting on. And then we're also voting on using our equipment replacement fund to purchase a new ladder truck So please take a look at that agenda. If you have any questions or concerns, please let us know before we take those votes. And then to add on to the excitement of the light rail stations opening, Redmond has also opened 2 additional trails to get to the light rail stations without having to use cars. So that's very exciting, and I hope that as we work on our bike ped plans, that we can start to do some more of those kinds of connections as well. Thank you.
Anyone else have a update of any kind?
I have a solid waste committee meeting on Friday, and I will send out the agenda for that.
I've got an Eastside Transportation Partnership meeting this Friday. Agenda will be shared. Also, I have a PIC meeting next Wednesday, and when those meeting materials become available, I will share them out.
I think I've got a flood control meeting coming up. The one thing I was going to just ask is please forward our thanks to our lobbyists and to Mike and to yourself as well, Mr. City Manager, because I do think our ability to work closely with our legislators has actually paid off in some ways, even with a really tight legislative session, and getting $300,000, $320,000, $30,000 in cyclone recovery funds, and this was 100% because of work with Lisa Callan, and I appreciate her so much. I know others assisted with that, but you know, it means something that we have a good relationship with our legislative delegation. We should end the meeting. What do you think? Is there?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.